Yeah. I'd like to turn it over to Vice Chair J.D. Grant to lead the meeting tonight since I'm on Zoom. So J.D., it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I will make a motion that we approve the agenda.
We have a second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries, okay. So tonight's just a work session, so no action will be taken to this tonight, but we are gonna have some good discussions and presentation about the 24-25 budget and reductions. Turn the time over to
So,
Superintendent Beckendahl.
Vice JD, or Chairman Grant and Nixon, well, we are wondering if you would like us to go through all of the slides, or you would like us to start with just like going through like the first ones, like one at a time, or go through all of it, or just take bits and pieces as you would like to see them. And so one of the first things was Michael, Keith, and Elmira talking about what we sent out on Friday. So how would you like us to proceed? I know.
That's a good question.
I know, because it is a works, I mean, we can go through the whole presentation, or we could start with one of the first things on the slide with, and then kind of go through it, and you could stop us and say, hey, we'd rather, could you go to this one? So we can do it however you would like.
Do you mind if we?
I think for the public and the people that are there, it'd be nice to go through the slides so they
Okay.
can see where we're from and why we're in this position.
Okay.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I'm comfortable with
Is
that, and then I want to hear Michael speak for sure.
I think we can go through the slides, but I would like to start with Michael.
Okay,
That's kind of where I was
Okay.
too.
That's what
But
we
so
kind
I
of thought.
think everyone knows how we're funded and why
okay.
we're here.
So we can definitely do that. So I'm gonna turn it over to Almira and Michael to, do we have that? Or just gonna look at this? Okay. She's got it.
Okay.
Is it on? That's a good question. How can you do this? Alright.
Okay.
So I will start the presentation and then I will let Michael give kind of take over and explain how it works. So last Friday, I was working on trying to prepare the preliminary Form L2 and already trying to figure out what our levy is gonna look like without the supplemental levy. And Michael and I, we started having conversations, so we're on the same page. And just to let you know, before we go into all the details, this is only related to bond, our current existing bond, the money that we've been collecting to pay off our existing debt, annual interest and principal payments. So, and this table represents our current school year, 2023-24. So that's the annual levy that we requested from the counties. Of course, we got some help from the state. That amount got reduced by $2.1 million, and that is our current tax rate without supplemental levy. So then moving into the next school year, so House Bill 521 is putting some restrictions on what we can collect in terms for our annual payments for the bond levy. In the past, we could collect up to 21 months, but House Bill 521 removed that flexibility. In addition, any cash forward that we have has to be used up, and the only solution at that time on Friday I had was regular defeasance. That's what the district has been doing. And when Michael and I were talking, This is our exact annual debt. This is what we will have to pay with the next 12 months. Interest plus principal payments, $4.6 million according to the debt schedule, right? If we levy this amount, we will get the help from the state that we will get, the House Bill 292, has to go exactly to offset as much as we can of that amount, because that's the purpose of that bill. Any annual levy that you have, when you get distribution from the state, it has to be used to reduce this amount. There's no way around it, and there's like a waterfall effect. If you don't have annual levy, then you can do this. If you don't have this, then you can do this. And there's like the list of items that you can do. And Michael brought an interesting idea. He said, well, the money that we have been collecting for the defeasance, would the board members be interested to use a different approach rather than the defeasance? So this way, you can use this money for facility and maintenance. So in other words, I'm gonna rephrase it again. The money that we would have used for the defeasance, we would use to make annual payments. That means we will not have to levy anything. And when the levy amount is 0, then Idaho code allows us to use these funds for regular facility maintenance. It took me a while to digest that. So, and I would like to repeat it again, or maybe we can have Michael kind of explain it from a different perspective, so we're all on the same page. So there's pros and cons to that, to any decision, you know, but, and the reason he brought it up, because he asked, well, when do you expect your House Bill 521 money? I'm like, oh, I'm pretty positive we will get it in August. And Michael will share some insights where he think it may not be in August. Maybe it's a good idea to look into this idea. And with that said, Michael, would you like
Yeah,
to
I'm happy to jump up there.
jump in and
I
talk
can do that.
about this? Okay,
But,
well, I don't really have any slides for you, it's just conversational.
we'll get some tax rate stuff in there.
Yeah, it's, oh yeah, tax rate.
Yeah,
I can. Sorry.
So let's, I mean, I think there's a few things to talk about. As you know, we've had a couple of different big bills over the last couple of years that have impacted school districts. The focus for the state has been two things. One, House Bill 292. So I want to step back a couple things and just, again, kind of give you that historical picture from a board's perspective. So, as you remember, and I've been in here and I've talked to the board before, and again for the public, I'm Michael Keith at Zion's Bank. I've kind of been the district's municipal financial advisor for a long time, and we've kind of worked long-term on this plan that allowed the district to kind of manage taxes, keep it low, right? While also understanding that we have investments, right, that we need to make in facilities, long-term. And one of the ways we were managing that for a long time was this, what Almira had talked about, which is 21-month levy. Well, it's actually, it's a specific code section, I think it's 32A, that just talks about how you can levy for debt service, right? And we've kind of termed it the 21-month levy, just kind of a simplicity standpoint, but really there's this section of code that says, okay, look, if you're looking at your debt service over the next 21 months, right, you're allowed to collect what you need in the current year, as well as, have some reserves, and those reserves from a cap perspective was up to 21 months worth of debt service, right? So that as those payments flow through, you still had funds that were available. And that is one of the many things as of House Bill 521 that's changed, right? In terms of what we can do and how we can levy for debt service. So really, this year is kind of a reset year to now kind of align us with how they want you guys to do that going forward. And really what that is that rather than looking at 21 months worth of debt service, you could look at 12 months on a calendar year basis, right? So what's coming due next year, which really just aligns better with tax flows, right? You guys are on a fiscal year, but you don't receive cash flow from your second half taxes until July, which then comes into your second fiscal year, right? So they're really, by looking at it a calendar year basis, right, we're now aligning your debt service with cash flow that's coming in. The other thing you said you could do is like, okay, well, we still want you to have some reserves, we're just not gonna allow 21 months, right? And so what they're gonna allow going forward is 120% of calendar year debt service, right? And so we were sitting at 21 months, that's gonna be too high. Now we're gonna be looking at, we need to bring us within line, right, with that 120%. So then the question is, well, what do you do with those funds, right? Well, the only thing you can do with it is pay debt service, right? That's all you're allowed to do. You collected it for debt service from taxpayers, even though it was reserve funds. So the only thing you guys can do with money sitting in that bond fund is pay debt service, right? And you guys have always had two options, right? The two options are that I can pay off future debt, right, to fees bonds, which the district has done in the past, which saves interest costs, right? Like I set funds aside in an escrow account until the call date, it calls the bonds in. I don't pay that future payment and I don't pay that future interest cost, right? The district has received significant amount of savings for taxpayers doing that. One thing that's different today is what Almira was talking about, which is the other bill that passed 2 years ago, House Bill 292. Oddly enough, they called that a facilities fund as well, but the primary purpose of that was property tax relief, right? And so what the legislature did is they put what's called a waterfall in place. They said, okay, we're gonna give you this money, and what we want you to do with it is follow these certain rules, which meant that if you were gonna levy for a bond, then you had to offset that bond with those property tax monies and lower property taxes. If you didn't have a bond, then the next thing in the waterfall was a supplemental. And then if you didn't have a supplemental, then it was a plant. And then if you didn't levy for any of those things, then those funds that were on there could flow through to a maintenance fund, right? And you could use it for a variety of things if you weren't gonna levy any property taxes. And so what Almira and I had talked about was thinking about the plan with the supplemental, right? That, you know, we increased the supplemental for the reason of we have these critical maintenance projects that are coming up, right? And we had operational needs with those funds and we had capital needs with those funds. And with the failure of the bond, we said, okay, look, let's try to get some funds currently in to try to meet some of those critical maintenance needs of the district. And then we'll come up with a longer term plan for capital once we understood what was gonna happen with, 521. Well, House Bill 521, again, which is kind of the omnibus bill, right? It did lots of different things, but one of those was the other facilities fund, right? The modernization funds that they had, which we're still working through the details of that, right? There are gonna be some rules in terms of what you can spend those funds on. The Department of Education hasn't worked through all those rules. There's also gonna have to be a process for which the state goes to the market, right, and generates the funds needed to start funding that $1 billion, and it's not gonna come all at once, right? So even though you've been given a projected number, it's not gonna come all at once. Now, the state has tried to figure out, well, how can we get a little bit out, right? And they haven't settled on that. They've talked about some date, potentially in late August. It's not gonna be more than 10% of those funds at maximum. And if the state does do it, they'll have to use current cash reserves in order to send that out, because the earliest that they likely can get to the market with a large bond issue to help start funding some of this is gonna be the end of the year, beginning of next year, before they can do any significant funding of those funds. So whether or not the district will get some funds, a little bit of funds, or no funds until the end of the year, I think it's still a little bit up in the air on whether or not you can get those funds. So that kind of goes back to what I talked about, that we have these reserves, and what do you do with them? Well, because 292 is in place and your supplemental didn't pass, the district has no other levies, right? So if the district, as a board, were to decide, rather than defease bonds, but use current cash reserves just to make this next year's payment, right? Which means that you won't have a bond on your L2, which means really you won't have any taxes on your L2 except for your tort going into this next year. under the waterfall provisions of House Bill 292, which were enhanced by 521 this year, the district can use those funds and set it aside for either new facilities, regular maintenance of facilities, and it's all kind of spelled out in House Bill 521. They changed some of that language for the district. So it's an opportunity, one time, right, to be able to reduce taxes for taxpayers, pay debt from debt service, align yourselves with the new rules going forward, right, with what we can have in reserves, and capture potentially a couple $1 million today, right, from property taxes to be able to use towards maintenance, which those funds will come in August, right? So the state's gonna send those by the end of August, and you'll have all that money up front. We don't know exactly what that number is gonna look like, but it should be at least what you got last year, which is 2.1. They did put more money into that fund this year. The long-term funding for House Bill 292, which is the property tax bill, which kind of ultimately is a maintenance bill, and funding, is from sales tax, right, sales tax distribution. And they did that because most of the replacement dollars for cities, counties, and special districts have always come from sales tax, right? They've gotten a distribution of those funds, but the districts have not. And so this is now a way for the state to also provide a distribution of sales tax that's collected to send back to the district. And so those funds went from, I think, 2.5 to, I think, 3.25, 3.5 this year. So they're increasing the amount of sales tax distribution with 521 to fund it more. Because, you know, some other funds are coming in later, right? So you're not gonna have levy equalization anymore. You're losing your maintenance match and lottery dollars as well. It's going over to help kind of fund this program long-term for the state. So really, you know, that's kind of the, I guess, the decision and proposal before the board on the maintenance side of things, right, is, you know, we have to do something with those funds, whether it's defease or capture some potential, you know, needed maintenance funds today. Either way, we have to spend those funds out. It's just a matter of how does the district and how does the board want to proceed with that. So I know that's a lot of information, so I will stand for as many questions as you guys would like to shoot my way.
That $2.1 million can only be used for facility maintenance?
Yes, can't be used for operational dollars or salaries or anything like that. The intent was to provide facility funds to the district if you've paid off all your other stuff.
I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. It can only be used for facilities and not for paying staff or any other things. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. Yep, so it was not intended to be operational dollars. It was intended to be facilities dollars.
Which is kind of good because then we'll still have a long-term problem if we use them for, you know, it'd just be a Band-Aid, I guess, is what I'm.
Yeah, and also what's interesting, this $2.1 million, Idaho code says you can use it for regular maintenance. Now House Bill 521, the new money, you cannot use them for regular maintenance. The exact wording is betterment or one-time projects. So the combination of those two is a good combination to keep up with the facilities' critical needs. Is that correct, Michael?
Yeah.
The language, the betterment and.
Yeah, the intent of the modernization funds, which is what's coming from House Bill 521, was to improve, address facility needs on a holistic, larger scale, right? That, you know, that there were these one-time fixes in roofs and piping and other things that needed to be done today and get fixed for long-term, you know, use of the facilities. And so the intent of those funds were to kind of plug those gaps, you know, in the budget. And as Mary has kind of pointed out, not intended for this kind of ongoing, you know, maintenance types of funds. And what we're trying to get to is House Bill 292 potentially being those funds as long as you don't have any other levies. Now, as soon as you pass another levy, right, then that changes. So like if this year you levy nothing and next year you levy something, you don't have to go back and capture these funds, right? That was a one-time year. But any future funds you get from House Bill 22, if there's a levy on the books, right, you have to go back to the waterfall, and you have to do that every single year. So if you do pass a supplemental, or you still have debt service, you know, in place, so this will be, and you guys have plenty of cash flow to do that this year, not levy anything, and still have some reserves in there, so it's not like we're gonna bleed this down to zero, but we're gonna take it down to an appropriate amount. Then again, we'll align the district with kind of the new, you know, kind of operational mode, right, for what you guys have to do, you know, going forward. So, no, unfortunately, it doesn't provide operation models, but it does give you some needed facilities ones.
Couple what's the, so this is, because our levy didn't pass, we can, instead of doing the defeasance and paying back bonds early, we can take that money, that's the money that we're taking, right?
Correct.
So well, then what is the downfall of doing that? It's just not paying off our bonds earlier?
Correct. Yep, you're just not paying off future debt, right? You're just cash flowing at this point, right? You're keeping your same debt service in place, right? So versus what the district did, you know, has done in the past, right? Which is like, well, we'll just shorten the debt, right? We'll just pay off our debt earlier. And by doing that, right, we get other interest cost savings. So you don't get interest cost savings from this, right? You're just making your payment as usual. It's just you're not levying additional taxes to do that. You're using reserves to make this year's one-time payment. And instead, allowing those other funds to flow through and use for other critical projects.
And so how does that make the, kind of the line graph of taxes kind of, does it look like for our taxpayers on their property tax bill, is it gonna like bottom out and then spike up the next year? That's what it, right? Like,
Yeah, yes, it will go back up,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there's no doubt that this is kind of a one-time, you know, thing. So let's put that in perspective, right? If the district were to do that, right, the taxes are still gonna drop. Just because of this change in the 21 month, right, it's gonna come down. And so you're gonna go from 124 to 53 cents, right, this year. And so likely if, you know, you know, depends on again what your levies are next year, right? Whether you go for another supplemental, or there's bond funds, and also how much House Bill 292 funds are available next year will kind of determine how much we go back up. But even if you go back up, right, we're not even gonna be as high as last year, right? It's gonna go down, and you're still gonna have these historically low tax rates. It's just that, yes, they will have to come, you know, back up. So it's definitely gonna have to be some communication with the, you know, community that, hey, look, this is a one-time, you know, kind of tax relief year because of some of the changes that have happened with, you know, House Bill 292 and House Bill 521. And it allows us to get some, you know, critical maintenance funds, which, you know, may help, you know, in future levies as well. But yes, we'll have to go back up next year.
If we put all the 2.1 into defeasance and pay down the bond and not use it, but for anything but to pay down, what does that do? Did I miss that?
No, I
Like, if we
mean, Chairperson Nixon, good question. You know, your taxes would only come down a little bit, right? So, I mean, you might be at 5.52 this year instead of 0.53. So that 0.53 assumes, right, that you levy 4.6, you offset that partially by your property tax relief, so you'd be down about 2.7 million levy, so it's gonna still come down. Last year you guys were at 6, right? And so even if you had to come back next year, you're not going back up to even 4, right? You're gonna go back up to probably around $2 million, you know, on the bond side of things, because you'll continue to get House Bill 292. So really the only thing that's gonna change that tax rate picture is if, you know, other levies get passed, right? Which would have changed it anyways.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
if we decide to put a bond on the whatever month ballot we're able to do in November. Does that, and it were to pass, does that affect us immediately, or are we still able to do that? Because it's within the same year, I mean, does that make a difference?
No. Anything you do from this point on will only affect next year's L2, right? So if you kind of remember and one of the challenges of, having dates removed, right, is you've got 2 shots, right, at doing this. And so May is your last shot at getting something on the ballot, or not the ballot, sorry, your L2 for this fall. So the only thing you can do, right, you can't have a supplemental, there'll be no increased bonds, anything like that. If anything passes in November, you won't be able to certify that until September of 2025, and those collections won't come until 2026.
Okay.
So, a couple questions about the levy. How much on the levy were we gonna plan to use for maintenance for this year?
The critical maintenance piece of the levy?
Yeah.
2.8.
2.8.
Okay.
For both years of the, we
Each
thought all of our
year.
projects would be
2.8. Yeah.
2.8, yeah.
2.8 for each year.
And remember, that was purchasing buses, so that, we wouldn't be able to do that with this money. And I think we'd have to check in on the fire and the technology, I don't think we would be able to do with this. The fire panels is it technology, is it?
The fire could work because the security is listed on
Good.
there, so.
It's
So
just-
like
they're a lot
roofs,
fancier now.
HVAC, security,
The whiteboards and
Roofs.
that would be considered maintenance?
The roof
Roofs would definitely be.
yeah.
and the HVAC.
Yes.
That's
Whiteboards.
probably 2.1
Yeah.
million then.
That would be?
I think
Should
your
be.
broken,
Should be, I mean, we
Furniture.
can dig in that a little deeper, but, I mean, same thing if you're kind of, ongoing maintenance, building facilities, things like that, so things that are kind of, important to the facility, you should be able to use 292 funds for.
So
a little
that's
bit
the
more.
2.142 million.
Correct, and that was what you received last year, you might actually get a little bit more this year, we're not sure yet, because they did increase that distribution that's going to happen under that formula. And sales tax for the state is still continuing to perform, so the expectation is you should get a little bit more than that, but that's what you received last year, and so we kind of put that number up, that we should at least get that, if not a little bit more.
And what's the amount of difference that we could use?
For defeasance, is that what you're asking me?
Defeasance, yes.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a different number, it's essentially gonna be around this $4 million number, right? So it's either we use that to pay current debt service, right, or we take it out and we pay future debt service, is really the choice.
And since there's no levy, we are able to use that for facilities.
Correct, so if your supplemental would have passed, this would have been a different conversation,
Right.
one, the need wouldn't necessarily be there, but if you did this model, then these funds would have just gone to offset your supplemental, and they wouldn't have flown through as extra dollars.
Because you can only use it if you don't have a levy to pay.
Correct.
The
Yep.
waterfall effect.
Because of that waterfall, it has to be used as property tax relief first, okay? But if you're going to zero on your property taxes, which is what you would be doing, you'd be using cash flow, then it frees up that funds for critical projects in the district.
So essentially, we could just leave that alone and use the House bill relief money
Correct.
for facilities.
So-
And then it doesn't affect the tax on the tax rate on the.
Well, so the tax rate will go down to almost zero, right,
Okay.
this year. So, yes, so we showed what the tax rate would be if you continued on this plan, which would be around, $53 per 100,000. You'd be almost at zero, right? So really, all you'd be levying is your tort, which is around 200K. That's it.
So there's different pieces to this puzzle.
There's different pieces to the puzzle, correct?
It's almost, but I mean, we take this money and the tax rate goes down. It's
Correct.
crazy.
Tax rate's going down either way, it's just how much.
Yeah, but it'll go down more if we take this.
Just for
No?
this year.
No, so
Just
if
for
you,
this year.
if you follow this plan, so, Mary, if you wanna go to the tax rate graphs that we have in here.
The last one.
So this plan, which is what Elmira was showing, so if you guys decide to defease bonds, right, so not use it as cash flow this year, your tax rate will go from 124 to 53 cents, right? Because, and part of that is because you levied 6 million, which was part of that 21 month, you can't do 21 month anymore, so your levy has to come down anyways. Plus you have House Bill 292 funds, so then it has to come down even more, right? So that 4.6 has to be offset by your 2.1. And so you only be levying for the bond just a couple million this year. If you decide to take cash out of your bond fund and pay off future debt. If we roll forward, 2 more slides, if you want to go forward.
2 more slides, okay.
Yeah. So your tax rate under this plan, if you utilize it as cash flow this year, right, you're not levying anything, right? So what frees up that House Bill 292 funds for somewhere else, you'll be at 4 cents. And then it will probably go back up to that 50-cent mark next year.
Does that depend on the amount that we use, or is that just in general?
It depends on, it depends on how much you certify next year,
Right.
right? So if you're just certifying for the bond, it will likely be, your debt service is pretty set at this point. And again, that'll depend on how much you get in House Bill 292 funds. If that goes up, right, then your tax rate will continue to go down on that. If you receive less in 292 funds, which is again out of your control, then your tax rate will have to go up a little bit, right, to service the debt. Now, if you add another levy, right, that's a different story, right, then taxes are going up either way.
So what downsides are we not looking at, like future, like how does it play out in the future, what kinds of things are of concern?
The only downside I see is the tax rate goes to the very bottom, like 0. People will see barely a few cents, and next year, whether we run for supplemental levy or bond, we still have to go back to paying existing bonds. It's gonna go back to $50 per 100,000. Just the communication, like we will have to explain why does it spike to 0,
Yeah.
1 year nothing, and then going back up.
Yeah, if we use this, it's almost gonna spike to 0, and then, if we do pass a levy, then it's gonna spike back up to, what, 3-ish? But which, in my opinion, I mean, for the longest time, we were celebrating that we were at under 5 for quite a while.
Yeah, so I think maybe a couple of comments on that, on Trustee Grant, if I can. So I think I want to put some context around that. So if you think about this tax rate of 124 that we're at, right? That is essentially a $4 million net levy, right? Well, 6.7, right, that you guys levied. So $1.24 essentially provides $6 million of tax revenue to the district under current market value systems, right? So what's happening now, right, is this has to come down no matter what. So back to the supplemental levy question, right? It's not gonna spike up to 3, right? If you added even the $5 million levy, right, and you're only gonna be at probably $2 million at your bond next year, at probably a maximum. So you're at 7, if you went for that big of a supplemental again. So you're gonna probably be back to 124. You're probably gonna be back to where you were this last year before going into this last, tax cycle. So, Trustee Lowe, you asked about the downside. So there's probably 2, right? So one is, yes, tax rates, right? What I would say about tax rates is that is kind of becoming out of your control anyways. The legislature's made so many changes to how we levy for things now. It's gonna really make it impossible for the district to control its levy to a point that it will never go up. Now, we can try to manage it so yes, there's not these major spikes and we're going from 0 up to something. And that is definitely a communication question, right, for the district on how they want to communicate that, and if that is appropriate and what you want to do and how critical those funds are to the district today for maintenance projects. The other downside, right, is the other thing we talked about, which is you don't shorten your debt, right? So if you are thinking about a bond, right, the benefits of shortening debt and having lower interest means if, geez, if I pass a bond and I'm able to fit that in, then, that helps me amortize that debt quicker, right? And try to minimize, the tax increase from a potential bond, no doubt about it. and there's been, lots of savings from that. I think the other question for the district, though, is, we haven't really had an opportunity to kind of sit down and figure out what those needs are in light of 521, right? We know that we are getting, approximately $21 million from those funds, which are gonna help offset, right, some of those needs on the bond side. And the timing in which we get those funds is probably gonna be spread out over the next, 12 to 18 months.
And
right?
you said, you thought we were, like that big chunk of money, you said that we'd probably only be able to take 10% of that at once?
Well, so I want to back up a little bit on that comment. So only 10% at best will be available right away. And that's because the state hasn't had a chance to issue bonds.
Yeah, they don't have the money.
They don't have $1 billion sitting around that they can just send out to districts. And so they have to leverage future sales tax and tax revenues of the state to get that done. So they have to go issue 10-year bonds. And they haven't worked through that process as well as they haven't worked through the process of kind of the timing of when all these sales are gonna go. And the other thing too is there are some requirements, right? And some requirements, which I know Elmira is working on, that need to be met, right, to get those funds. Some districts are gonna be quicker than others. So it could be that, say, they do their first cut at this is 300 or 400 million. They'll take whoever's ready, right, that has kind of their stuff in, and maybe you get your funds then. That's still not gonna happen.
Make sure you tell them that we're ready first.
It's still not gonna happen
We
until
are.
end of the year, beginning of next year, right? Because of all the steps, right, that the state has to, it's interesting. So we've talked before with your current bonds, tax exempt debt comes with rules, right? This one will be a little different, right? The state is issuing bonds, not the district. The funds that flow through to the district will actually be grant funds effectively. And so how you spend those will really be up to the state, right? The state's gonna put whatever parameters and what you can spend it on. The one benefit that will help with some of this going forward is that those funds that you do receive, when you do receive them, are not yield restricted like they typically are. And so in the environment we're in right now, where you can earn 4.5% to 5%, you could earn that, right? And so that will spin off some additional funds too. So in terms of what the impact of the next bond is gonna look like, a little bit depends on, obviously, what we're trying to build, what the 21 million is gonna go for, and likely what that 10-year plan that you guys are working on looks for in terms of long-term needs and timing on that.
So, historically, in my opinion, if we do this, the taxes are gonna drop more than if we don't. And you said there's two downfalls. Downfall is we're not paying off, we're not decreasing our future debt.
Correct.
And the other thing is our tax rate will be somewhat volatile. But if you look historically, that volatility of the next couple of years of tax rate is very minimal compared to what it's been.
Correct.
Like, we're at an all-time low as it is right now in our tax rate, which is pretty cool.
Correct.
It feels like a golden goose, other than not paying off future debt faster.
So for clarity for myself,
Yes.
doing this does not reduce taxes. It only, because what would really reduce taxes would be the defeasance. It
Well,
only reduces what people are paying for 1 year.
Correct. So
But-
trustee
okay.
Lowe, yeah, so it's a one-time large reduction, right? In terms of, needs, and I guess, maybe the question for, the district is that,
It is reducing taxes for 1 year.
yeah, it is reducing to 0, right? Like the voters said, hey, look, we're not gonna pass this up one, I was like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, right? And then you're giving a one-time tax relief, and then, yes, taxes will have to, come back up. I guess the other question I would ask the district about taxes is, we were gonna need, supplemental, which was gonna be taxes, which some of these funds could offset, right? So you could argue, right, that if, this reduces, future funds that you need, that it will also reduce some of the future taxes as well, right? Because you're not gonna have to ask for as much money if you can get access to this funds instead. So I think that's what this, kind of the district needs to kind of think through is, you know, are there some additional benefits to having those funds, and what's the priority, right? You know, would it be better to pay off debt, future, and we'll get some tax lowering, but, you know, again, that's just the interest cost savings. The real savings will come later, right, to taxpayers when it drops off, and it's dropping off, you know, quick, which is what the district has already done, right? And it's shortened its debt, and you've saved about $5 million in interest cost because of that. So really, it's kind of a matter of how critical are these funds, and where would these funds otherwise come from, if they're not gonna come from a supplemental levy for the district, and knowing that some of the funds that we're gonna get from 521 will be restricted, right, in terms of what you can do with it, and may not come very quickly, or at least not as quickly as you guys would like. And we don't have a clear picture on the timing for those funds yet.
And just so that I'm clear, the reduction in tax rate probably has a lot of ingredients. One of them is defeasance, probably, of future debt, and that's reduced the tax rate. But another is an increase in property value. Is that how that works?
Yeah, you know, so Trustee Lowe, I assume when we're talking about this lowering of taxes. So yes, it is kind of a melting pot of lots of different things that have led to it. I would say these drops through to about 2023 was largely driven by the district backing off on taxes some, right, on its own, just levying less, right, for its debt, because it didn't need to, and bonds weren't passing other things, right, so that's a little bit of it. The other part of it is certainly market values going up. I would say these last couple of years have been driven by the legislature, right, the legislature has said, hey, look, we want to lower property taxes, right, and so we're gonna come up with funds and redirect sales tax to help districts and lower their taxes, right, so they were inevitably gonna go down anyways. Problem with those funds is that you don't know how much you're ever gonna get, because if you have, that is the thing to recognize, right, there could be a year where sales tax go down, the state decides not to send the funds, lots of things can happen, right, and it is a year-to-year thing. Yes, they provided long-term funding, but they've already said, and they've said this as part of House Bill 292 funds, which is also why you can't use it on elections, right, on your election ballot, is that it is not guaranteed, right? None of this is guaranteed to happen every year. So, but that's kind of the story. There is a little bit of a melting pot of the reason why taxes have gone down in the last several years.
The House bill, if we get that money, I know it's gonna be dog-eared for how we can use it. Would we be able to use that money to pay back bonds?
We're talking about, Trustee Grant, are we talking about the modernization funds? Or are we talking about House, so there's two buckets, right? There's the House Bill 521, which is the funds that we've been talking about that the state will have to go out and issue bonds for and provide that lump sum up to the district. And then there's House Bill 292 funds. So House Bill 521 funds, the intent of those is not to pay down debt service, right? The intent of those is to go out and do what the bill has said, which is modernize facilities, right? Go build something, go fix something, go improve, our facilities, around the state. The intent of House Bill 292 funds is a little different, right? Property tax reductions first, and then that one, you can use it to, not necessarily pay down bonds, but you can use it to pay debt service, right? So that one's a little different, where it does allow you, and which is why we're offsetting, tax levies with it into the queue, right? The water bill that you'll look at every single year.
So 292 could be used to pay these debt services back if we pass a levy?
Well, yeah, there has to be a levy in place, so it's not where you can, so the one thing that the legislature put into place is you can't do what's called duplicated funds, meaning that if you're getting this 2.1 million, you can't go levy 4.6, right, for a bond, or essentially 6.7, right? Use 2.1 offset to get to 4.6 and then have $6 million in the debt service when your funds are only 4.6, right? So what they're trying to say is, we want property tax reduction, right? You can't collect more than you need and then do the defeasance, right? And we're also capped under 21 month now, right? That's gonna make that more challenging to do. So their intent is that it needs to reduce taxes first. And then if you've done all those things, then yes, it can go for future bond debt service payments to offset that, or, pay facilities.
Well, so it'll either help us decrease taxes or pay back debt.
Correct.
So, yeah, okay.
I mean, I feel like if you look, obviously I know we're not taking action, but just for discussion, like, I don't know if you pay down debt when you're at if your roof is caving in, you know what I mean? Like, that just kind of seems like when you prioritize things, you're gonna fix your caving in roof, or your heat and air conditioning before you pay off your credit cards. I don't know, to just make it very, very simple, I don't know.
That's good, okay.
Can we use, we don't have to use all the 2.1 for facilities. We can take a look at what we need, is that correct? And then use some of that for your defeasance? Can you use it partially?
No, so trustee, Chairperson Nixon, so if you made this move and you freed up the 2.1 million, then the use of those funds then have to become, facilities funds, right? So you can't then later use some of those funds, right, to then go to fees bonds. Like if we wanted to fees bonds, then we would want to be able to capture some of that money this year and then to fees and then offset taxes otherwise. So because facilities are kind of the last in the waterfall, right, we've kind of chosen not to levy for bonds or debt service or anything else, and therefore we get to use those funds for other projects within the district.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there any other money anywhere in the budget that could be used for critical maintenance? Like, are there other funds that can be used?
Unfortunately not. We are on our last dime, whatever we had left from 2017 bond, and we are completely dependent on the money that the state promised, that Michael was talking about, House Bill 531, 10% in August hopefully, and the remaining dependent, but no, currently we would have to use our general fund.
Yes, so general fund, you can, our
Mhm.
state, is that the same thing as savings?
Yeah, we could use the fund
Right.
balance, definitely.
You could use our fund balance for it,
Absolutely.
if that's what we chose to do.
Yes, if
Okay.
we choose.
But that's really the only money that could
Yes.
possibly be used.
The only money that we used to receive from the state, they call it lottery money and maintenance match, and they will no longer fund us. So between now and August, if anything is to happen, hopefully not, but there's a critical situation, we will have to use the fund balance, yes.
And what's that balance?
So currently, we're estimating it at, oh gosh, I have it on my slides in here. On the slide, it's on the slide, let me check what slide it is. And I'll find there, that's a good question. So currently, I'm estimating, the question is what's the current fund balance? For this year, once we go through the audit, I'm estimating we will end up with $9.6 million, which is around 22% if you round it. And with the plan forward, as we, now without the supplemental levy and with cutting down of $2.5 million in expenses, we will still have to dip into the fund balance as planned, and then we'll bring it down to $6.4 million. Around 13%. So, to answer your question, Trustee Bruce, for emergencies, if anything should happen, we could use money out of this balance.
Cause I know we're using general funds for salaries and things like that.
The what's the percentage that we need to stay at? Is it 13% to have?
So
the
they
review
recommend, yeah,
With the bank?
yeah,
It's the
13 is a good balance. That would cover, 2 months of operations, if anything, so that's kind of a recommended 13%.
And that's, by staying there, that saves us a bunch of money with the bank when we
Yes.
have to
So
borrow.
what amount would you like to keep it at?
The fund balance?
Yes, general fund, what's like the
So-
maximum you'll go
So
for spending?
the auditors usually recommend, 13%.
Right.
And then, the company Moody's, they could put us at a high risk if it goes below 9%. So between 9 and 13, I know there is a huge gap. My recommendation would be what works for the district depending on the situation. But 9 is considered to be a low percentage. 13 that's what recommended, at least 2 months worth of operations.
So a 6 million, 2 months worth of
Yeah,
operations?
on average, we spend $3 million a month between salaries and utilities.
What's recommended for the self-insurance option that we looked at? I mean, didn't we need to keep that percent fund balance high in order to qualify?
So yes, so for the conversations that we have about self-insurance, the recommendation from our advisors is to start saving and having at least $1.7 million. That's the minimum requirement, kind of buy-in. You really don't lose this money, you just lose access to the funds for a year. They wanna make sure you have it. And that's why the recommendation is it's 13.78, so kind of investing in the future.
So
And-
this would keep us in that area?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Do you have any other questions for Michael, or?
What questions should we be asking?
Michael, what other questions should they, is there any,
No, I think you're asking all the right questions. I think, again, the game has just changed a lot over the last couple of years, right? So, how we think about levies and bonds and how this comes together is not what the past used to be, right? And so, I think really for the district, it is thinking about, what are those immediate needs, right? And how critical are those needs and how should we solve them, right? And this is really just to kind of provide an opportunity that hey, this is one solution, right? Especially in light of, that your supplemental didn't pass, and the earliest, even if the trustees even decided to do this, would be November, right? Which we already talked about when those cash flows would come in, right? Which would not be until 2026. So it's really just, it's a matter of, what the needs are and what the importance is. And, recognizing that, yes, we used to manage tax rates and that was great. But there's a lot of reasons why we don't do that anymore. And now it's really looking at what those needs are of the district and what do the trustees want to do going forward. And I think you guys have asked all good questions to understand these very new, complicated bills, right, that the state has put before you, which is House Bill 292 and House Bill 521, which have been two very significant bills that they've passed that's impacted school districts over the last couple of years. That has really kind of changed how we have to think about our long-term planning for levies, which include bonds, supplementals, plants, and some on the operational side, because they have taken ongoing maintenance funds, right, that could be used for some staff and some other things that's no longer available to districts, right, going forward, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
thanks for thinking of that.
Yeah, no, happy to do it, that's what we're here for.
That was a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, let us know, obviously, if there are more questions that get, generated as trustees start to have, more conversations about this, and if there are, of course, any other follow-up that we can do for the district, happy to do it.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
And Elmira.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think one point that I want to make as a board, make sure that we communicate with the public that this is only an option because the levy didn't pass. I just don't want the public to think, oh, there's other options and we don't need to pass a levy. Like, I just want people to understand this is only available because the levy didn't pass.
Correct.
And really, it only benefits the critical maintenance portion of that levy. It's only taking place for a portion of the critical maintenance that would have been in place with the levy, not operational funds.
Correct.
So this is gonna go to, I mean, if we were to do it, it'll go to fix roofs, it'll go to fix HVAC, it'll go to whatever we prioritize as the most important for facilities type things. It's not gonna go to salaries, it's not gonna go to hiring teachers. And I think that's an important thing for people to know. And I feel like, in talking to people, I do kind of feel like that's what our community wants. They wanna see the schools in good shape and so, I'm not sure, no one knows why the levy didn't pass. We don't need to pretend we do, but I do feel like that's something that people, that portion of it, I feel like people support. I don't know, at least a lot of people.
Well, it's there, so at least you guys have are able to have a conversation about it. So I'm glad Michael was able to come tonight, and Elmira and Michael worked on that a lot, so.
So, and here it talks about first year of facilities money, so would this address that?
Sorry, what slide is it? Employee closure. Okay.
Which slide are you looking at?
Okay, is it this slide, is it this slide? Oh,
So, if we use the money from House Bill, does it help with the facilities money to address critical needs? That's what we're talking about, right?
yeah, this is the allowable use of funds.
Okay.
Because it's, the flexibility about it, it doesn't just say, it doesn't dictate what we could use money for. It has a very, great description, facility needs maintenance, ongoing fixes.
I think that we probably should take it from the top of what you guys' recommendations were, because, yes, if we do this, we can pay for that so that we don't have to close the annex, but do we have enough money to pay for admin and teachers to run the annex and the classrooms and the education that's gonna take place?
So we could go back to, do you want to go back Elmira to the slide, because I think Brian's gonna.
This one?
It depends on how far you go back.
Yeah,
25, sorry.
let's see where we are.
Okay.
Stats.
Do you wanna-
Yeah, go ahead.
Chairman Grant, did you want us to starting to see if there's things,
Probably let's
I
try
think
to,
it seems like a good idea.
let's
Okay.
did you want to
go through the
The
top
very
and look at.
first slide,
No, we don't need to go back that far. We already know.
okay,
you guys go?
so
There is
maybe.
one slide though, because a question
It's
was
okay.
asked about from the state, like we spend 9,000. Did you all see that slide? Can you
Oh,
find?
that's about the funding.
Yeah.
I would like to go back to
Yeah.
that slide
Yeah.
if possible.
Okay.
Right here.
And time-wise, I'm gonna try not to take a lot of time, but we actually receive a lot of questions, and I can see where they're coming from. When you go to state's website, there is a requirement, they have to report an expense per student. And what they do, they take the total expenditures that we report and they divide it by the number of students, and then they have this big number, like as soon as you click on the district, and many times, it's really hard to see all the details, and people think that's how we're getting funded, $9,000 per student. So this is actually an expenditure per student after the fact, just kind of because I receive the same questions, and I can see you click on the school districts and there is that huge amount. It's a combination of CTE funds, federal funds, title funds. They combine it all together and divide it by the number of students. So this is the expense amount, not the revenue amount. And just a reminder, and you guys already know it, but it's more for the public. This slide just shows how we're funded. and this is our true funding, here's our enrollment, but we're actually funded based on the attendance. All it takes is for a student to get sick, or even have maybe a dental appointment 1/2 of a day, or maybe a family's taking some personal time. And on average, our attendance is 93.5%, which generates 264 units. So this is kind of a breakdown of how units generate the revenue. And I have attached the detailed PDF document showing line by line how the revenue is estimated.
Can you give us a number, like this is 9,035, that is the expenditures, but like how much are we funded from, federal, state, whatever?
Yeah, what I could do, I don't have that number right now, since we're funded based on units, what I could do, I could take the total amount that we received and divide it by the number of students. That will give you an idea of how we're, like, the estimated amount received per student. And then we can
From all
compare.
sources, or?
Yeah,
Like,
I could do that.
Like, it'd be interesting to know, like, this is what we need to spend per student, how much are we funded, like, per student gap, I guess, is what I would be interested in
Yes,
seeing.
I
It
can
might be
definitely
helpful.
provide that
Okay.
information. And then, are we going, I'm gonna like go through the slides really quick. And many times, sometimes I get a call like, are we really overspending that much, $5.7 million? And the truth is, not really, we just lost 2 sources of revenue. We lost our supplemental levy and our ESSER funds. When you lose the revenue, there are only 2 ways out. You keep asking for more money, and you cut down on expenses. And this year, we are using a 50-50 approach. And so right now, the current plan, unfortunately, the supplemental levy failed, and we have to reduce our expenses accordingly, $2.5 million, and that's what the proposal is gonna be. And even with that, we're still gonna use our fund balance to cover the remaining 3. And when I estimated $3 million, I go very conservative because of so many unknowns. I estimated inflation and estimated kind of worst case scenario. Could it be better than 3? Probably, but I'm kind of going with the worst case scenario, so we could be ready for the future. The goal is definitely not to dip below 9%. The recommendation is to stay at 13%, so we can try to invest money into self-funded insurance. And for current year, and this is what we're gonna go through, is the proposal, unfortunately, to cut down on $2.5 million. Otherwise, we will exhaust our fund balance shortly and go below 9%. And
I'm sorry, where's the 5.7 coming from? Like,
Over 2 years.
It's over 2 years.
it's the supplemental levy
It's
and
2.8 per year.
ESSER grant, federal grant that we received in 2020. So in the past, we were awarded federal funds during the pandemic school year, what they call, and we were awarded on average $3 million a year. And unfortunately, this is the year where we lost 2 sources of funding, supplemental levy and federal ESSER funds.
so we're only cutting 2.5 this year, but if we have no other source of money, we'll have to cut another 3.2 next year?
Correct.
Or another,
Or use the fund balance.
or use the fund balance again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, in second iteration, yeah. And for the, and this is kind of addressing your question, for the next year, we're gonna decide what's the best path for the district to address. And like I said, I go very generous on the expenses. When I'm not sure, I always add the inflation, I always add potential like curriculum, technology, what can possibly go wrong with that. So between $3.2 million. And and then how would you like to proceed with the proposal budget cuts? Would you like me to leave the slide on for a few minutes so you can ask any questions? or would you like Director Graves to kind of go line by line and explain what it means?
I think an explanation would be good.
Okay.
And is it possible to, like, put a tentative number next to what each of these?
Yeah, and tentative is the key.
Yeah.
So the very first one is cutting activity, busing, and field trips. So fast version activity would be like football. Easy to, it's not curriculum related, there's no grades tied to it. Festival for band, where you're in band class and you have to go to festival, that would be co-curricular, and that's not what we're talking about. So we're talking about all activity busing. And then field trips, if your PTA still wanted to have people go to the zoo, and it wasn't curriculum rated, then PTA, if a booster club said, hey, we want busing for track only, and we wanna pay for it. So we just took out, what did we spend in activities and busing? We estimated that was $70,000. And the quick comment is gonna be, why is it only 70? Remember that 85% of our transportation is refundable, so we only pay 15%.
So this is like, represents 15%.
Of what the true
Okay.
cost is,
Okay.
but you got your oil, your gas, and your pay for the drive.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna ask, okay, so for football, for example, how do the kids get there if their parents can't take, if they have no way to get there, how do they get to their games?
Absolutely, yeah, West Ada does this right now, and they do some carpooling, they do,
So is there a policy, I
We
mean,
have-
there sort of have to be a policy change.
yeah, so parents could take their kids?
Yes,
Yeah,
Oh, so you would change
we'd
that.
have to change.
It would have to be a policy change.
right.
And then how many field trips do kids do in general? I mean, what is that cutting out as far as? Because, I mean, high school doesn't really take field trips, so this would be affecting more elementary school than secondary.
Correct, but and then your elementaries don't really have activity busing.
They don't really.
So it's kind of like
Okay.
the way. And remember, we're not saying to do this, we're just giving you
Sure.
like the worst restaurant of all time, the menu to pick your food from.
Okay, so I have so what if a teacher wanted to do a field trip, and parents volunteer and they sign forms and do it that way so that they're still available to do?
Yeah, like if a PTA, PTO say, hey, we're gonna pay for this field trip.
Just another question too, is it possible to ask parents, like I know sometimes when my kids were in elementary school, they get a note home and it's like, this field trip is gonna cost $750 or whatever.
Sure.
Like,
Pay
is that
for it.
still available? Like, teachers could be like, we wanna go on this field trip, it's gonna cost $15. Like,
Yeah, I think that would be the fun of rewriting the policy to make it
Okay.
fit how we want it to.
Yeah.
So would that in turn be able to cover busing? Like, would they have
I think if
access to a
you,
bus?
yeah, if you chose to make it so that the trip could be taken as long as it was cost neutral.
So you said,
Okay.
as long as we don't use any district funds.
Right.
Yeah.
So then my next question is, parents do pay an athletic fee, what are they paying for?
Then-
Because that was for busing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we still have the coaching salaries, we still have the cost for the officials, the cost for the scorekeeper, all that. So you could go, because that's gonna come up, is that one of these?
Yeah.
Later, you'll see that we talk about raising fees.
Okay.
But yeah, this would take a policy change.
I
You want
think
the next
we
one?
just- I think we just rewrote that one.
Cause yeah, right now, you're allowed to ride to the game, but you can't. You could ride home with a parent. Remember that our AAU does freshman basketball and our American Legion / club does freshman baseball. So there's 2 teams already that have no transportation. Cutting curriculum, it's a supplemental, not core. We have a list of these that we talked about, and we kind of put a dollar value on this one is 75%. That we would cut into 75,000, not percent.
And can you give us like some examples of that?
I think learning without tears was one.
Was it handwriting?
Handwriting without tears.
What is that?
It's in that elementary supplemental writing instruction. I think no red ink is another one at the high school level. These are all supplemental. So meaning not your math book, but maybe a come beside curriculum that helps support that.
Okay.
But we kind of just gave it a dollar saying, hey, let's cut 75. Our goal was to spread this out, so it wasn't just we're cutting for grade. To try to spread it out so everyone got
So what, if we're cutting some of that, are we cutting things that are actually helpful to students?
I would say everything on this list is helpful to students, or otherwise we wouldn't have been doing it to begin with.
So how important is the curriculum part?
This is like a trick question, isn't it? Because it's all really important, but we're saying that the only way to get to
I know,
2.5
but this
million
one's a little, this one affects the
Sure.
kids a little bit more than a bus would. And it helps teachers also.
The next one was on Wednesdays. Right now, we run 3 different routes on a Wednesday. We run a middle school early release, then we run an elementary early release, then we run the high school regular out-of-school day. So this is it's a little bit more than our activities, about $80,000 that we estimated the savings if we eliminate the middle school early release and just have elementary as early release, secondary does not.
And what about not having early release at all?
Yeah.
Does that increase savings, like,
Yes.
No,
like
it
for
does not.
elementary?
No,
It
because you're
doesn't
still running
reduce
2 routes.
another-
No. Because you're elementary and you're still running the exact same 2 routes, you're just doing it at a different time. So, I mean, I guess if you could,
If it's all the same, we're saving money.
this one is because we run 3 routes on that
Okay.
Wednesday, not 2. Every other day we run 2 routes.
And
We
how
run an
does it,
elementary route and a secondary route.
how does it, how would that compare busing wise? Like, I haven't thought this through, so forgive me for saying it out loud, but eliminating a full day of busing. Like, doesn't that save us even more than 80,000?
And remember, we in turn get money back because we
Right.
provide less. So there are states that provide no transportation to and from school. They just don't take the money in, so then they don't in turn spend it. So I would have to research how we could, how we would do.
Like,
according
I'm
to
saying
our
a 4-day
rules.
school week, would that save?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're
would
not,
that
you're not
save-
saying Friday's walk day.
No.
You're saying,
Exercise for everyone, mandatory.
you're saying 4 days.
I was just saying, like, can we save even more money by eliminating a full day of busing completely on Friday?
So fuel and oil, absolutely.
Or whatever day.
We would have to decide, are we, salary is the other one, because those same people would only work, so we would pay less in salary. So yes, there would be a savings.
Yeah. I think it'd be super helpful to see what that cost savings would be.
What a 4-day.
Yeah.
Well, I know that they were doing research on that,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Research is being done.
Yes.
The one thing that I don't like about the 4-day work week is like kids already shut down after like 5 hours, 6 hours of
It
learning.
would
and
lengthen your day.
We're gonna require them to be there for 10.
So
Or
is
you
it-
just.
Extend the calendar.
Extend your calendar, absolutely.
Because we're already, like, it's only taking off another half day for elementary and middle school right now.
The nice thing is there's many districts that have done this, and more bigger districts are looking at this. The one thing that's been common amongst secondary is the block schedule. There's not a district that still has a block schedule on a 4-day. That's why Coeur d'Alene School District chose not to do this. They wanted their block schedule, but that would be something we'd have to throw in with it, is a
Well, and
schedule
it
change at the high
affects
school.
sports, after school sports and school for secondary. If they work, if they do sports, it affects, if they're in school till 4, it affects that also.
Good, your Middleton and Emmett are local districts that are bigger that are doing it, Post Falls.
Nampa.
Most of your eastern Nampa will be a fun one to watch.
So the
See how they
ones
do it.
that didn't extend the hours per day and cut to a 4-day week, how many days did they add to their year to do that?
Or the state's not worried about days, they're making us hit our hours that we have to meet. So we
No,
still
but how
have
many
to.
more days did they have to extend to the year to hit those hours?
I can
I
ask
could-
Nampa.
I know Nampa did both, they extended their time and their days.
And
Not
do
that they have
teachers
less
still work on
days now,
Fridays?
but they have like longer.
I will find out from Nampa.
Because isn't it true, these are things I'm hearing, so
Sure.
I'm gonna just ask the question
Sure.
since this is a
Yeah.
work session. Like the students attending in elementary are already surpassing their number of hours to meet the requirements for high school, is that correct?
Kind of. Their days a little bit shorter, but you're right, because
Okay.
of our elementary is 900 and our secondary is 990, is that correct? It's been 2 years since I've been there, I don't
Mhm.
worry about hours.
I think a 4-day school week picture would be like with budget cuts? I mean, if we're doing things that cut $70,000, it seems like we're gonna save some money, somewhat.
And we do have 4 days, like as.
Do you?
Well,
It's
because
on
we,
here?
It's on.
Oh,
again,
I'm
because of
sorry.
the next,
There.
because of us also saying, hey, there's probably gonna be a next round of
Okay.
these, is that one
I'm
just
sorry,
takes a
I
little
missed
bit.
that.
Well, it wasn't on that 2.5, it was on our next round, because
Oh,
we
okay.
just said that one would take us a little bit more time to research for
Okay.
August. Not replacing student devices, which eliminates, this would be a one-time savings. It-
So what does that mean?
So right now, my student is able to take his computer home,
Right,
he's able to keep using it, and then we buy another round of these
oh,
Chromebooks. Now we'd say we're putting them back in the classroom, and now he uses his math computer in math. My son. And then the next period he goes to language arts.
he's
he'll
not
use his-
using his own.
Not the same
Chromebook.
one. It won't travel, it won't go home. It will just be like how we used to have them in the
So if someone
classrooms.
does digital learning, how does that work?
Their mom and dad will definitely have something to do digital learning from home.
And they can use their money they saved on their levy taxes for that. I mean, for real, right? But I think the not replacing the student devices, wouldn't it be still kind of a repeated savings because we wouldn't be replacing them, like, we have to replace a certain number every year.
That's where the next,
Oh,
well, what's probably, it may not be that's the extreme of the savings. We said the first time it would be 320,000. But you're correct. Now there's gonna be a few more damaged, a few more changed around keys, a few more.
and so do you
changed
think it
around-
would make it so that teachers would really have less access to digital learning options for their students?
Possibly. It just depends on what's at home for computers or what's in their pocket to do their work with.
Because they wouldn't really have them in every class.
Right now Chromebooks are not going home at the elementaries. They just are at the middle and high, so that would change the way the middle and high kids. It may change Netflix a lot too.
I mean, what if they took them home during the year and the end of the year you collect them and then?
That's what they're doing now.
Yeah, you just run the risk of that kid didn't bring it back and your teacher needs that computer. This way they become back to ours. They're not the kids anymore now, they're just the schools.
Isn't there a rule for that though, now?
You talking about policy?
A policy or something about if a kid loses a Chromebook or?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you have to pay, absolutely. Or you check one out.
Yeah. Or if you misuse it, then you don't get,
You don't take one home?
get one.
I'm just thinking there's some students who don't have access to anything at home.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, once again, we're not saying this is.
Possibly if we do that, maybe there could be ones that you like check out if you need to.
There'd be some in the library.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we can work on, again, we can figure out whatever would be best,
Next page, this was some of the suggestions of the people part. And please bear with us as this has been a lot of what we've done. Some of these slides, this number should be 5. And there's one position that's not listed on there. But we have, I'll do the easy ones first. We have a maintenance ground supervisor who has resigned, Kevin. And he is moving on to a different, I guess, school district, another school. So that's an open position. Our office manager, Twyla, has resigned. She's taken a job in the Boise School District. So those 2 positions will not be filled. Technology director is a little tricky because this person's still here. Kim is stepping up 1 step to be superintendent. That means somebody will fill her role, somebody will fill that person's role. So ultimately, it's our technology director that we will not be replacing because of Wendy's resignation. Does that make sense?
And when will we, I don't know when the proper time to talk about this is, but as far as the assistant superintendent, I believe that we talked about that position not being filled.
Yes, we did, for the year.
Remember, these are our recommendations, so you guys.
Yeah,
We're at,
so I didn't know, I wasn't aware that we were shuffling that forward.
I don't think we are, we never approved it.
Okay.
So. Okay, moving forward.
The positions that we're talking about eliminating are our communication specialist.
Okay, what does that mean? What's a communication specialist?
We have a person that is our communications director, and that person, the communication specialist, has been employed for the last 2 years. They assist on everything technology, they help run our board meetings.
And they were paid with ESSER funds.
Correct.
So can't the technology director take over that?
Yeah, we're gonna take all 5 of these positions that we're talking about. There'll be
Dividing.
people in here that will take
Okay.
on all those roles,
Okay.
with the roles that they're currently doing.
Okay.
And the other one that's not up here is our, I just lost it, growth, community
Community development
development director.
Yes. Okay, so my question for that is, obviously we need someone who's going to be able to bridge the gap between us and the community. So we would need to figure out what that would look like, because there's no staff member that could do that.
Robbie is currently doing.
I know he's working with her, but he's not fully capable of doing her job. So we'll need to discuss that.
Currently we pay for 4,
Maybe,
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask a question. That's okay.
Go ahead,
Hear
Kim, I'm
me?
sorry, yeah.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure that I'm sorry. I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly, that all of these that'll be going away will be picked up by other people to continue doing what you've been doing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Within the district?
To the best of our ability, absolutely, as well as with the jobs that we're currently doing.
So as a board member, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at people that really, I want to keep the people that really affect the students more than anything. And I love our community director that you were talking about, but that's a lot of money that could go to the classroom, to, in your point, to curriculum, non-supplemental curriculum. And I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm just giving a different perspective of that whole thing, because I know that you guys are gonna step up and make sure that we're doing the best that we can. It just means more work for other people.
Correct.
So I'm done saying what I was gonna say, but I'm not sure that we need that person when we're losing out on stuff that really counts for kids.
Yeah, and just pointing out, I assume all of you got an email from the mayor saying, please keep her. And so I think that's what we're
Sure.
talking about.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be the full, but there's other stuff if we keep going that can be discussed too, so.
Yeah. Something to think about.
Yes.
Currently, we pay for 4 resource officers. We are recommending that we pay for 3, and we find grants and we find other ways to
We have,
do this.
here's that.
Yeah, so
So we're able to keep
Kim's
all 4?
Kim wrote a grant to pay for 3 resource officers, so right now we're only paying for 1, correct?
Well, no, we won't, well, yes, currently, but we just got a call from the Office of Drug Policy on Friday.
Yeah.
And
The plan with all the
Yeah.
grants that we're receiving
Yeah.
and shifts that we did, we will use 0 general funds for SRO officers. They're all gonna be a little grant here, a little grant there, Title
For
IV.
all 4 of them?
Yes,
Mhm.
That's awesome.
yes.
Nice work.
Good job, guys.
Kimberly.
And so
Because
that's,
I was concerned about that.
that's $120,000 in savings additional to what we already had. So that's amazing. Great job.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, thank
Yes.
you.
Other than that, something that we can, I'm just gonna say it, that we can leverage with the city to help us with, but now we have grants for it. That's like the main one that makes sense to me, but, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, we recommended 12 certified positions, and these were our recommendations for those.
So, instructional coaches, make $99,000 a year. And I do believe that we can cut some of those, because we have 6 of them. So like Kim was saying, it seems like support for the students is more important. So if we're talking about Title I funds, they're also going away, then that means we don't have funding for parapros. So it would be beneficial to keep parapros over all of the instructional coaches.
Is that how many we have, is 6?
Yes.
6.5.
Yes.
So our recommendation is to go down to 5. 6 certified staff, 3 at the high school, 1 at the middle school, 1 in Synergy, so there was a plan to have 5 teachers at Synergy. Because of electives and intervention now, it'll just stay at the 4 that most people are very familiar with, and 1 at Hubbard.
So what?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just wondering, for clarification, can you explain certified staff?
Same question.
Okay, just for everyone to make sure we're still,
So the 3 at the high school are, our numbers at the beginning of when we budgeted said that we would need 2 of our 18 to 21-year-old teachers due to the high number. But with enrollment now, it only looks like 1. So we budgeted for 2. So that was an easy one. We hadn't actually filled that position yet. 1 was listed in the levy talk. It was a CTE Ag teacher. That position will be shifted from general fund to career technical money instead. And the 3rd one is just a reduction by 1 FTE. Kuna Middle is a reduction by 1. The Synergy was a reduction by 1, and Hubbard is a reduction by 1, based on our estimated roll over, roll up numbers for enrollment.
so certified staff are teachers, in
For-
the classroom teachers.
In this one, yes.
Yeah. Classified staff would be paraprofessionals,
Yeah.
that kind of a thing.
So one agriculture is being paid with different funds.
CTE money.
CTE money, so we'll still have 2, but 1 will get paid.
We'll start with 3.
4.
We have 4.
Well, 3 out of general and 1 out of
Okay.
career tech.
Okay, so I guess.
So I have another
Do we
question.
need 4 ag teachers? I mean, we need to get real here. Do we need 4 ag teachers?
I don't know.
Just asking.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, Kim, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, are some of these positions that we have, aren't some people not coming back next year, and there's some people who are retiring? So actually, we're not losing any teachers, is that correct?
We're reducing 12 positions. So the numbers of people teaching are 12 less.
But all of these people have either placed somewhere else within our district or have resigned, retired.
So like 2 issues are, one issue would be like taking care of the people, hopefully that we can keep good people and give them jobs, but another one is paid positions. So we're reducing with this plan 12 paid positions. Possibly some of those people will have other jobs
Correct.
within the,
Well, the instructional coaches don't teach.
right. They teach teachers.
But we could use those instructional coaches to go into the classroom if needed, correct?
Correct. So the 1.5, one is a resignation, the other one will be transferred within the district to another position. 2.5 pupil personnel staff, remember these are your social workers, your nurses, so we would go down by one of our nurses, half of a social worker, and 1 counselor.
And just so you know, those positions, the nurse position, that was paid out of COVID money, and so that doesn't exist. We had hoped all year that they kept saying, hey, we think we're gonna get that COVID money again, and then it was like May 1st, they go, oh, sorry. So that was a hard one. Social work, that was again, money that was just a one-time, 0.5 of a social worker for a one-time year, and so that position doesn't exist. Because again, that was in general funds.
So what does a social worker do?
They're in the elementary schools. They are probably one of our biggest supports with some of the mental health issues and helping families with all kinds of different things.
Are these people that like facilitate backpack program
Yeah.
and all that kind of thing?
Yes. The homeless families and all of those kinds of things.
I have another question about instructional coaches. If they go back to classrooms, do they go to classroom salaries, or do they keep the salaries they have?
The salary piece is the same as a teacher. It's the extended days and the stipend that follows the instructional coach, so those people would not get those.
And so it would maybe,
It would be a pay reduction,
yeah,
but it'd be a less work reduction.
they'd work less, get paid less.
They have less responsibilities on them. Never would I ever say a teacher works less.
Right, okay.
That's not coming out of my mouth.
They would change their
Yes.
responsibilities.
Correct.
That's a better way to say it.
I don't know if we'll get to this, but I know, like, I guess another part that we should see before our next board meeting would be, what does this look like if we adopted what we talked about when we first came here? Like, how are we gonna be able to save a lot of this if we did that plan?
Which plan is that?
But Michael Keith had spoken about.
Oh,
Well, that's just building, that's not.
yeah,
any
that
of this.
doesn't change any of this, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it would, because we don't have to use some of our general fund money for the maintenance.
For the project.
But we just weren't gonna fix those things, right?
So, let me see if I can answer the question. The money that Michael Keith was talking about were for the critical maintenance need. So that will help us, because the levy didn't pass and we didn't get full amount for supplemental and for critical maintenance. It will help us to take care of the maintenance part of it, but unfortunately, it will not help us with this situation.
Okay,
I wish it did.
alright.
Maybe,
Whatever.
do we have any building maintenance in here?
No, there's
So,
not.
yeah, I wish it did, but unfortunately,
They were moving kids, we're not fixing anything. We're just
Well,
moving
we
kids out.
have to fix it.
Eventually, we have to fix it.
The funds can fix that.
The money's funds could, yes.
And so since we're talking about this annex, if we do what Michael said, are we able to fix that prior to the school year, do you think? Like, is that something that could take action in order to reverse this decision of closing the annex? Or is that something that would take
We
too
get
long?
it done in time.
Like, if we can get it done in time, I was just wondering. Like,
But I thought he said we don't get the money till August.
no, this money we
This-
already would have available, right?
yeah, this money would be available
Yeah.
before August.
Yeah.
So possibly if we took action quickly
Mhm.
at the next meeting or whatever, we could put that into place and avoid closing the annex.
That's kind of what I was getting
Yeah.
at.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Is
sorry.
that a yes?
Mhm. Yes, so fixing the annex would be allowable use of facility funds.
So I guess there would need to be a bid too on what does it cost to get rid of it.
Yes.
And I guess, is that the number one highest recommended thing to do with that two
Next
point
to
one
HVAC?
million dollars?
Mhm.
Or is it something else? Because we have a solution, albeit painful, to manage that. But is there something else that we should do with that 2.1 million? Like, is it HVAC or security or what?
I'm so sorry, I think the high school needs some air conditioning.
No,
There's
I
a
would
lot of
agree with that
students
too.
in there.
I would say
Yeah.
that's
And-
the first two.
I mean, I got a text from my son the last day of school that was like, my classroom's 87 degrees, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
I mean,
So
If
it is a real
if we-
problem.
If we went to fix the annex, what was the cost of that, or what was the bid, or whatever, to see if we could do a couple things?
In 2017, when they hoped to get it done with the bond money, it was projected at 68. So we assumed a couple years later, it's almost 8 years later, we estimated it between 80 and 90.
A million?
Yeah, I was like, let's just factor it at $1 million.
Since we're in 2024,
I
it's
think
not
prior to the levy decision, our hope was when a company came to bid on Reed, we would get them kind of not a 2-for-1, but it's, your workers are here, a lot of your stuff could be. So we were hoping that when they go to bid, that the companies would bid on both and it would actually be a little bit of a cost savings for us.
And how about the air conditioning at the high school?
How much is that?
Man, we estimated that was gonna be a major, that was gonna be probably a replacement of a boiler. I don't have those numbers when we estimated. And remember, these are Kevin and my estimates when we were walking. We'll have to do the whole seal bid, the whole process. And when we estimated that, it was gonna be a lot. I think we were over $1 million.
So I guess we
It's
would need to
amazing.
see that next board meeting, what that looks like, what the numbers are, so we can decide.
We
what
will,
money needs to
we would
be.
have to go out to bid to get you numbers. So that would never happen by June, by next week.
A rough estimate, like not to take action on.
Yeah,
it,
you just want the same estimates that we used
whatever-
to get the
whatever
levy
you
number.
think
I
it
can do that,
was.
100%. So when we discussed, and remember this was, we have no levy, that means we have no funds for those critical, so how do we prioritize? We looked at the 3 buildings that I'm jumping ahead. So when you do the Hubbard Annex, we talked about teacher transfer from students to Ross and Indian Creek. The positions that could be cut, these aren't people, is an admin, 1 certified, 1 office manager, 1 security, 1.25 classified positions, and displaced staff transferred to open positions in other schools. Then you'd also not fix the annex roof. The fire panel would be looked at differently because there's still gonna be a temporary, the word temporary was used by us to get us through until we had a plan B.
And these students fit in the other spots? I mean, like, what's the, are we just adding classroom sizes? What are we doing? Oh, thank
Was this one, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our pre-K, the preschool, we would shift to the main building. We would also shift our technology team and our technology storage from 4th Street Gym all into that building as well.
Into
to-
which building?
Into the main part of Hubbard. By
Can they
moving
not
our,
go to the building over in the middle school, at Kuna Middle?
they wouldn't have the warehouse or all the
Oh.
storage. But if we have Hubbard open, then we would. And then that way we could move forward with looking at the sale of 4th Street Gym. 217 students with our roll-up, that's K through 3, would be relocated to Indian Creek and Ross. Indian Creek Elementary would change from a K3 to a K2, but it would only house the current 2nd grade. Indian Creek's 3rd graders will shift to Ross. Ross Elementary would change from a 4-5 to sort of 2-5. Hubbard's 2nd grade and Hubbard's 3rd grade. So you'd have to split your 2nd grade. We looked at, do we look at a Crimson Point, but now you've got that crazy wild family that has a kinder, a 2nd, and a 5th, and now you're at 3 different schools. So that's why we just tried to keep it to 2 schools.
Well, then, before we switch, when it says counselor on this last one, what counselor?
It's a .5 at the high school because they lost a counselor, and so the numbers went down, so it's a.
Yeah, from 4 counselors and 2 counselors in the middle school to
Mhm.
3.5 and 1.5.
Which one left at the high school?
Adam Jones.
What was his counselor position?
Was he?
Because he wasn't a part of, was he a part of alphabet counselors?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was their homeless liaison person and within Kinvent and all that too. He did teaching.
So tell me, is this making class sizes bigger at these schools or what? What's the,
Yes,
because there's not open classrooms, right?
no.
So when you shift 3rd grade from Indian Creek, that opens 3 classrooms. Currently, there's a special ed teacher in a larger classroom, and there's there's a smaller, we've talked about keyboarding. Indian Creek's one of the last schools that have a computer lab. Most of your keyboarding is done on Chromebooks. It can be done in the schools, or in the classrooms. So
Okay,
it would, so for those 4, it would really only increase by 1 class. 3rd grade classes are a little bigger than kinder and 1st. So student population in Indian Creek would be relatively the same. Ross's population would be quite a bit more.
But we'd get rid of keyboarding classroom
wouldn't-
and,
We would repurpose.
Repurpose it,
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. We would
Okay.
move, it would be very tight at Ross. We would have no empty classrooms in Indian Creek and Ross, any growth.
And like, can it handle lunch and stuff?
The cafegym, I can't even say it right,
Gymatorium.
cafegymatoriums, lunch in Indian Creek should look relatively the same. Ross's lunch is gonna be,
Are they gonna have to do
Longer.
like longer, like more shifts and stuff? Like, they're gonna eat at 9:30?
yeah, we'll have to do a little bit of a bathroom change at Ross. Second graders are a little shorter. than
Okay.
fourth
And I know
graders.
it's not on here, but Title I, since we don't have that, what do we do with parents?
We do have some,
It's
Yeah.
reduced.
it's reduced.
So, and the current process is when, the federal allocation goes down, then we just do not rehire people for the next year. We do not shift them to the general fund. So yes.
So with all this going on, wouldn't it be important for teachers to have the support in the classroom with the parents, with extra kids and shifting kids and moving kids around?
Yeah, I think some of that goes,
Keep going.
yeah, I think some of that does.
Just real fast on this, that change from synergy from being, the state funds different students different ways, an alternative student gets more funding. So by making this change, it allowed us to take two positions and shift those funds. So this was definitely a positive.
That was a
move for us.
genius move.
So does that mean we're not paying for synergy at all, or we're just not paying for those two positions?
Those
we're able
positions
to-
come out of alternative
different funding.
funding.
Okay.
And just for clarity, because I don't know if everybody understands, that would make Synergy an alternative
Yes.
middle school, not
A
what it has
program
been
at the middle school.
previously.
Correct.
So are they still gonna stay at Fremont?
Yes.
Oh,
I think it would be super good to change the name of it. Is there a way we can change the name? Because right now, like, I'd be like, oh, I like project-based learning, I wanna sign my kid up for it, and then they're in an alternative or middle school.
I think the learning is still the same.
Still
The learning
doing it
is
for
still the
fun.
same, it's just, we're calling it alternative high school,
Middle.
so,
Middle
or middle
school.
school, so that we can get funded, get the extra funding for it.
But you have to qualify by
And it-
by
and it
having some
does.
issues
And
for
it does,
Synergy.
it does qualify.
Well, yeah, it does, but I'm saying students have to qualify to be in there based on attendance issues or grade issues, or like the same way they qualify for
IP.
IP.
This one's a little bit different. We just turned in the alt application yesterday for Synergy, and it's a little bit different with the middle schools, because I didn't think we would even have it in the middle school, but it's called a school within a school, so it's a little bit different. The rules are a little bit different, so it doesn't have to meet everything, but they do take that mix. But it'll still be how Synergy is with their project-based learning kind of style. But the rules aren't like they are necessarily with IP. Those rules are pretty strict on the high school kids.
I think it sounds like that we present either in June
Yeah.
or July
Yeah.
and explain what it takes to be, qualify as a middle, alternative.
And I have that application, I can show you, because I just turned it in, it's Friday, I turned it in.
So is that gonna be on a future agenda to talk about or not?
I think it'd be easy for us to present to you guys and
Absolutely.
tell you about.
Yeah.
Just for good information,
Well,
I
yes.
think, and for the
Yeah,
public to
yeah.
know.
Yeah,
but since it's
Yeah.
its own entity, shouldn't it be out of Fremont?
It doesn't have to be with middle school, you can do a school within a school, high school you cannot, it has to be a freestanding building. So without this, with our space need, they can, if you're an all-school kid, then you can do band. If we take them out of the building, then you eliminate all the music options. Especially it becomes really tricky, now you got to.
because all those kids will do the electives at Fremont, they'll do sports at Fremont, they're still part of Fremont, it's just a school within a school.
One of the
It's
biggest
numerous.
concerns too is if you take them or put them in initial point or off-site, then you've almost said that kid as a sixth grader is already pathed to stay all, the whole way. Maybe something happens in middle school, maturity, puberty, things may change and maybe you're not pathed to,
Oh, I
maybe
see.
you choose to go. So yeah, we thought about all these, I promise, and we did discuss about a rebrand and rename, and those four teachers really, they feel like this is actually what they did from the beginning, and somehow along the way it became the good kids, the high kids, and that's not what their mission was, that's not what they believe, and I don't wanna
It's
speak
kind
for
of
them,
all
but
kid, I mean, they want it to be all kids, all that mix.
I think it'd be
Yeah.
awesome for them to come present to you guys.
Yeah,
It
I'd
may
love
not
to hear
be
it, cause right now it
in
feels like
July
as a parent,
Or August.
Yeah,
like Synergy's been around
Absolutely.
for a long time, and it certainly is gonna be different now. Like, no matter, it'll be
Yeah.
a different place, so. But great, we'll have more money. Since this is a budget conversation.
Right.
So that, the next slide is not anything about Hubbard, so I did not wanna short you guys if you wanna keep talking about, if this is an option you want us to consider.
I mean, I think it's a creative solution.
I guess it just depends on if we can fix the roof and what that looks like for the summer, honestly.
But either way, it does cut some cost from our budget and it fits them into another area, so I don't know. Something to think about.
This kind of already
Yeah.
got wrapped, right? So we kinda, and maybe you guys stole our words or we stole yours, but we kind of prioritize the re-roof. This is, please remember that this is with thinking of closing the annex. The reed roof and the Kuna High HVAC were kind of, seem to be the grading. However, tomorrow, I think Trustee Lowe said it earlier, tomorrow you may have a stove go out or we may have something go that all of a sudden jumps it. So hopefully not.
So with this 10-year facilities plan, like, could that coordinate with a plant levy type of a situation? Isn't that like a 10-year plan usually too?
Yeah.
That's been
Yep.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was heard when Michael talked about the ability to gain interest. I mean, if we get the money all up front and able to gain interest, it definitely, it's almost like we have a new plant facility levy that,
Mhm.
because you're not gonna fix everything in 1 year,
Right.
because then something else is gonna break. Keep going.
And I can talk about them. These are just the snapshots from the communications from the state in regards to new money, House Bill 521. I kind of highlighted, they will send us a template, or we can use our own, and that's, and we will fill it out. And then the plan has to be approved by the board. And Brian and I will have to watch all the webinars, that's mandatory. And then we sign in until, well, actually, I think this week is the last webinar. And then, so they're hoping, and this is where Michael was talking, they're hoping they will get access to the funds by August 31st, at least, the initial portion, hopefully. And then the remainder will become accessible within the upcoming year. So kind of keeping the snapshots there.
Just to make sure I'm clear.
Mm-hmm.
This would be like, you put a 10-year facilities plan in place, and hopefully the first year of funds maybe is available August 1st or somewhere thereafter.
10%.
To handle year one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then they're hoping that, let's say, January of 2026, or maybe later, they will finally give us the full allocation. But we do not have to spend it right away. We can, split it over the course of 10 years and start earning interest little by little to kind of, extend it as long as we can. Or, some districts may choose to use it for construction. But yeah, we could use it right away, we could split it over the course of 10 years. But it is recommended to ask for the full amount right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say get it while you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. With all that.
So I have a question. If we do what Michael says, that's 2.1. If we get the money in August, that's another 2.1 million, so that's 4.2 basically. We have
Correct.
for
Correct,
critical
Trustee.
maintenance or plants.
Yes, correct, yes. With the recommendation from Michael Keith, we will have access to the first old money immediately, 2.1. And in August, hopefully we'll get another $2 million. That means by August, hopefully, in our bank account, we should have $4 million for facilities.
For facilities and plants, so stuff
Yes.
that we could do. Okay, that gives me something to think about. Thank you.
And so this is just the ideas for the potential revenue, maybe one time, something to discuss in the future. Maybe we can sell some assets, but once again, it's just a one-time solution, soft money. But something to discuss, and Brian could talk more about it if you have any questions.
Do you want me to, like, the policy?
I had a question. Didn't we try selling the 4th Street gym at one time and we had no buyer?
I don't know.
According to policy, the only way for us to sell this would be have to get it professionally appraised, then we have to do a sealed bid, and we cannot sell it for less than what the appraisal is. So I don't think that would have been before me, I don't know if we went through all the process. And this would be only one-time money, we wouldn't have this.
But there have been some interested
Oh, yeah.
parties, yeah,
There's a lot of interest.
yeah.
I think finding the appraised value is gonna
Right.
be
There's a
the
lot
wild
of
card.
interest, but it's a lot of peanuts on the dollar
Mhm.
for the building.
What people think it's worth or what, it'll be very interesting to have it appraised. And then we would have to, once you guys say do that, then we'll have to have it, so we'll have to pay to have it appraised.
Yeah, do you know about how much an appraisal like that would?
I don't.
I thought when we did it, that was about 100 grand.
Trustee Thornton has an
That's
idea.
That was ridiculous.
I can just put a number out if you want.
Lots of people have done that, yeah.
Well, we can sell land too.
But it seems like it would be not a wise idea to use these one-time things for like salaries and ongoing things, because that's just a replacement of the ESSER fund issue and temporary fund issue. I mean, to me, it feels like some of these revenue things might be better used for critical maintenance or building something, I don't know.
And that's the same place we find ourselves with the supplemental levy. It's something one time that we used to have teachers or whatever, and now it's gone. So it puts us in a bind too, I agree.
Right.
No, do you want me, I didn't know if you wanted me or you doing that.
We can both talk about it. So, and some ideas that we were brainstorming, should we increase participation fees? Is it even feasible, what do other districts do? Or maybe sometimes, sometimes we're in facilities, sometimes we just, give discounts, sometimes we allow nonprofit organizations just to use it for a night or so. Should we just, should we increase rental fees? Should we create a flat rate? It's something to discuss for the future, kind of increasing the sources of revenue, maybe one time, maybe ongoing. And Brian, do you have anything else you would like to?
No, remember we have a 3-tier, so
Just throw in all ideas.
So what are participation fees looking like right now?
We don't charge them, we just charge the athletic fee.
So is it like $40? I mean, how
It's
much
like
is it?
$100.
Like $100 per sport, is
at the
that?
high school, I think it's 50 or 75. I know it was 50, maybe it's,
It went up, it's
middle
100.
school is 75.
And it doesn't matter what sport, it's all the same?
I think it's all the same.
Just for sports, yeah, not for like the underchoir, because
Okay.
you
They're
can't charge, because they're
co-curricular. Those are
co-curricular.
Okay,
And they get a grade, so you can't charge for that.
And
right,
right now that money solely goes to transportation.
Yeah.
okay.
So it doesn't offset the salaries, salary might not be the right word, stipend, officials, all the expense. Which all comes out of general fund. So then we could, if you increased and you took away activity funds, now you could still offset more general fund.
We were also negative last year in sports, $80,000. So there's that also. I actually believe we should be charging fees for sports because we don't pay for that ourselves, so.
So what, do you have kind of a suggested amount that we would maybe,
We just said to offset $100,000. We just kind of put a
Whatever it
number to
would
it,
be.
and then whatever that would be based on how many participants there were, do some division and.
I would have to be per sport. I mean, because you're not gonna charge track $200 to go run track.
Just
I mean-
pole vaulters.
No.
Just kidding, just kidding.
We're earning some money this time.
So before perfect. So, the one thing that, and I know the formal budget hearing is around the corner, and we're cutting down on $2.5 million, and so other districts with the failed supplemental levy. So the one good thing about the preliminary and revised budget with the state, what we could do, we can agree on the expense amount, you know, for example, if you have some feedback on what and who in terms of $2.5 million cut, it could be decided later. So the most important is to submit to the state saying, this is our expense, and it's gonna be, that amount already includes the 2.5 million reduction. But we don't really send report to the state of who and what and positions to that level of details. So we can, like, if, depending on your comfort level, let's say if you would like to think on certain reductions or provide additional feedback, we can agree on the overall expense, revenue expense, and fund balance, and submit the preliminary budget to the state, and then polish all the details, and then submit the revised budget to the state. But something has to be submitted, and the budget has to be approved by, I think based on the number of days that I estimated, we only have 3 days past July 11th when the budget has to be approved, the motion to approve the budget. So kind of a heads up. There is a preliminary budget and there is a revised budget. So revised budget would be maybe the same amount, but maybe the shifts between expenses, depending on how comfortable we are with this list of $2.5 million budget reduction. So what I'm trying to say, we can send the report to the state saying, yes, we're cutting down on $2.5 million because we don't have the supplemental levy. But we don't have to agree on all these miscellaneous details, positions, names, the amount, curriculum versus past activities. So all of those could be polished and sent with the revised budget later. But the initial budget has to be submitted on time.
And tell me that date again.
So when do we have? June 11th? That's when we have our Tuesday, Wednesday, by Thursday.
After the next meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. After June 11th. And then another thing that I just wanted to point out, so no surprises in June. So the recommendation would be, in terms of salaries, right? The recommendation would be that amount already includes the proposed salary schedule adjustment for classified personnel. It's everyone but teacher. Each year we adjust the base salary schedule by 1.5% to account for the cost of living adjustment. So the recommendation would be to keep moving forward with the adjustment, because all it takes is 1 year and then we're gonna fall behind again. And Nampa School District, they have their supplemental levy West data, so they're all gonna provide at least 4% increase. So the recommendation will be to keep moving with the cost of living adjustment, because we're already gonna ask people to pick up the load. So the recommendation would be to just keep moving with the salary schedule. If you would like me to attach it to the report so you could see what it looks like, please let me know. So that amount will already include the negotiated salary schedule for the certified staff. Certified staff as teachers. So, and it will be presented on June 11th. So even though it's an add-on cost to the total expenses, I would call it the last year of iteration where we had to correct the salary schedule. And we will give you a background. We're on our 2nd year of merging 2 schedules into one and adjusting the cells. So there would be a presentation, but I just wanted to let you know that that amount will include some salary adjustments. And if you have any issues or concerns, please let me know. I can send it to you ahead of time. So, and also that amount is already the sum of all additions and subtractions, our new contracts, and included the inflation, us shifting to the custodial services contracted, all pluses and minuses, and already considering $2.5 million reduction. So that's the amount that we're going to propose in June. And I also have the very detailed document kind of providing the breakdown. And I don't see, like, if you have any questions, I'm here, please call me, or let's schedule a meeting so we can go through that. So I'm estimating with this amount, the worst case scenario, we will have to use the fund balance is $3.2 million. Everybody who watched my presentation in the beginning of the school year and then at the end, I always assume the worst case scenario. And then I come back at the end of the school year and I say, it wasn't that bad. It was only $2.7 million. I always assume a big gap, enrollment, attendance versus funding. I don't assume any supplemental one-time payments. And with the expenses, if I'm not sure, I add on inflation for gas or utilities for heating. So this is kind of my worst case scenario, hopefully, and the recommended fund balance will be at 13.78%. There is a little bit of a wiggle room, but the recommendation would be not to go beyond that amount. Oh, sorry, I thought there was a question. Do you have any questions?
I think maybe,
Well,
go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I would like to know a little bit about Hubbard Elementary. If we were able to fix the annex, how much do we save by making everybody move, I guess? Or how much is that gonna save us by having them move to all the different schools and do all that?
I think it's 180.
Yes, thank you.
And then if we still fix the roof, then it's just 100.
Okay,
I think we,
Sorry, Brian, could
about
you,
half of that. We considered the roof being half of that, right?
could you repeat it out loud?
Yeah, we considered, when we said we could save about 180, 200,000, about half of that was the roof.
Was
okay,
Right.
the road?
so
Or was that no?
I think this
No, that
180
was
is
now.
Just
sorry.
salary?
just salary.
Just salary. So then it would be another 90, 80, hopefully 50.
So you could eliminate one position to save 4 or 5.
I think another, I mean, I'm only speaking for myself here, but I think for our next school board meeting, if we could see like how it's gonna look with this, $2.1 million, if we chose to go that route, how the big picture's gonna look, and then how it's gonna look without that route.
I think the $2.1 million just fixes whatever we decide we wanna fix. So
Correct.
all the rest is the same. Am I right about that?
Correct, with the exception of Annex. We
Right.
could, yeah,
But if we don't fix the annex, then this $2.1 million will go for like fixing things,
The high school, the
Like, yeah.
AC, the.
right, the AC and all that.
Because we wouldn't have had a revenue source for that. We would have talked to you about a patch at Reed,
Right.
and then patches of all of our HVAC. I don't think we could have patched the fire panels because we can't.
No, but like what I was saying is we have 6 instructional coaches, we're getting rid of 1.5, I mean, you can get rid of another coach and save $900,000 and put that into the people at Hubbard. I mean, there's other ways to save money.
I'll be honest, I kinda like the idea of closing the annex and moving, because it saves quite a bit of money, and I don't like the idea. I don't think we like any of them. I'm just saying,
It saves $100,000.
it saves an $180,000 and we get to put the money, the $2.1 million to something else. That's, like we temporarily Band-Aid one, solve some other big issues. And this seems not ideal but workable. I don't know, that just sort of seems.
But I think, I mean, I realize we gotta focus on next year, and, I mean, it's not like even if we pass the levy, we would still have issues that we'd need to be fixing in the future. So, I'm hopeful that we could pass a levy and that we can minimize the damage that's gonna take place this next year. And with the funds that we're getting from the state and, hopefully being able to pass a levy, and maybe even having to do the emergency levy depending on what the, student enrollment is after we start school. I'm hoping that we can reduce a lot of the damage.
I
For
think it
next year.
seems so hard to pass a bond in November and then a levy again in May, or, I mean,
I
it
meant,
feels.
I didn't mean bond, did I say bond? I meant
But no,
levy.
you probably said levy, but I it feels like we need to consider a bond, but it just feels hard to get both of
For
those.
I
right
agree
now,
with Hillary about, we need to consider about the bond, because of our growth. But at the same time, these measures that we are taking are not helping students. And I keep thinking, we've got to do something to get back to where we were. So I'm thinking maybe levy, I don't know, just throwing that out.
I think for at least the next year, I think we're still looking at trying to pass the levy in November, which is gonna be tough.
And I agree with you on that.
You think pass a levy in November and not put a bond on the ballot?
Yeah. It's gonna be-
I don't know how we can go with a bond if we have this many cuts and issues.
The bond's only gonna make more, I mean, it's gonna be great that we're gonna finish schools, but we don't have the money to put teachers in the schools once the bond's passed.
It's something that we definitely have to think about.
I guess it depends on what we use the bond for.
The bond can only be, we can't hire teachers with bond money.
Correct.
Bonds can only be used to build.
Yes, but is it like to finish out the high school, like is that adding classrooms and?
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah, the bond would be like if you're gonna want to finish Swan Falls.
right,
Yeah.
but does that add classrooms or just add like,
It would add, yeah, it adds classrooms and finishes, put a gym and all
Uh-huh.
that in there.
Well, I think in the
Well-
building would also do that.
I
I
kind
mean,
of,
those are the things.
Yeah.
I just feel like we need to focus right now on damage control for next year and passing a levy. We need to focus on that for now.
like, wasn't it 70-something% of people voted to not
Correct.
have the levy?
I
mean,
actually
that's-
feel like there's way more positions we could cut and save money.
I wonder if it just feels like a steep, something, I don't know how to put another levy on the ballot in November when 70% said no.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one.
Well, I think it's the people that showed up to vote, were all the people that said no. There was
Right.
only, you can't say that because it wasn't a wide, there was, 5,000 people that voted? Or there's like 30,000 people in our district?
But that's
So-
pretty standard, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, how do we get more, do you think it's November when more people would come because it's a presidential election? Is
I
that
do.
what you're-
I do.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't have any other options.
the other options are just to continue to work on a reduced budget.
We're still gonna be doing that anyway, even if we pass the levy. Well, do we have,
Do you want
we have any more slides?
I think that's it. I think we went through
Yeah.
them back and forth here and there. I think, yeah, so
Did you
got all the feedback.
We talked about future, what we're looking at the future.
We did look at the future, yeah. Which one?
One thing I just wanted to try to give some direction for you guys for our next meeting, because, we gotta take action and figure out how we're gonna do that and how that's gonna look. You guys feel like you got an idea of how that's gonna look for next Tuesday?
I think so, and I think if we don't, I'll just ask some questions like, is this gonna be helpful or not, or if you've got something like, will you check on this, or, give us a dollar amount, we'll do whatever research we need to do to get you
Well,
the information. you
I
need.
have a few of those things written down if it helps right now, just so that, and none of these are new ideas, things that, I think we've approached before, but I think it would be a good idea to look at what savings would happen if we outsourced our busing.
I think that was one of the things
We just said,
No, completely outsource it,
Yeah.
like to a third party,
Yeah.
like we did janitorial,
Well, I guess
custodial.
same with the grounds.
Same with the grounds and lawn care. I feel like those types of things, like if it saved us for custodial, it feels like something that would possibly save us in some of these other areas.
We did that not that long ago. We addressed that for both of those things.
And do you remember why you decided not to?
For the busing?
Yeah, I mean,
Busing was before me, I know we got 2 bids on,
yeah,
grounds, and it was significantly more on grounds than it was what we pay for grounds.
yeah. It wasn't gonna save us any money for grounds, I know that, and the busing looked like a
Well, we
nightmare.
have this new company, she said that we could talk about it.
But
with
would
the-
be
the
bad,
busing
yes,
company.
revisit
No,
it.
ABM.
ABM.
Oh,
Yeah.
maybe
I
they
mean,
just
we could definitely go out
presented
to-
a couple months ago.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe it was, maybe
just
the
wanted that.
grounds were more money because it was like at a higher standard, but maybe if we just
Okay.
try to get it to where we're at right now.
sure.
We did, and I need to find this, we did a efficiency audit for our transportation, maybe it was like 4 years ago, because everybody was fussing about the routes and all that, and so there was a company that was out of New York, and this lady came out here, and she talked all the transportation, did all of that. At the end of the day, what we ended up with is that some of the buses will line up this way and some of the buses will line up that way, but she also said, I don't know how you're doing what you're doing with all that you have. But I will find that, Wendy got it, so I'll find that. So we did an efficiency audit, with our transportation company to see what are we doing wrong, and, you know, people were fussing about routes and long times on the bus, and we're like, all right, how do we do this better? And so I will find that.
Well, I know, some people talked about how we had previously looked into, outsourcing busing, and it was not the same scenario as the custodial, like, they wouldn't keep our people, but, I mean, at this point, we're not keeping our people anyway, so, some of them, so I think it's worth looking into again, but,
What do
then,
you mean we're not keeping our people?
well, like we weren't able, like, they didn't hire our same staff, so they weren't keeping their jobs.
I think the only people that didn't keep their job were the people that chose not to.
Well, I'm talking about busing, like when it was looked into previously. Kim, isn't that what you said, Kim Nixon?
No, I know, but you said we're not keeping.
What
our
I
staff.
heard
I just-
prior
Like 12
is
people?
that when they come in, they hire all of their own people, yes.
Right,
For transportation.
For transportation.
right, for transportation.
Yeah, we hired 26, the 26 people that applied to be custodians with us, we hired all 26. It actually
Yeah.
hired 2 more to be supervisors with ABM.
Right, and I just know
We
that
hired
like,
everyone.
Chairman Nixon said that one reason why the busing was not
Oh,
an
gotcha.
attractive option was because they didn't have the same type of a situation where they didn't agree to hire our busing
Gotcha.
staff to go with the outsourcing, so.
That's what I heard, correct.
Anyway, I think it's worth looking at, just to make sure, but, and like, Kirsty has said, I think we should look at what it would take to remove instructional coaches and see what, I know that by law, they need some mentorship. Maybe that stipend, some of those funds could be still, given to other teachers as mentors.
One thing I wanna be careful with too is the verbiage that we use. Hopefully, we're not removing instructional coaches. Hopefully, what we're doing is taking instructional coaches and putting them back in the classroom.
But then they would be teachers, not instructional
Yes.
coaches.
Yeah.
They'd be rehired to a different position, yeah. But it would save the money of the 6 instructional coaches. And then like I said before, I think we should really consider what a 4-day school week would look like. And I think that, if it is some savings, it should be on the table and even for the next school year.
For this coming school year?
I mean, I don't know, I feel like if it saves us some money, because then it would save us money this year and all the next years too.
I know we revisited that quite a few times, and Wendy was pretty adamant that it wasn't gonna save us any money on the 4-day work week.
We can do some research with our colleagues, you know, cause Napa just went through it, we'll just get it, so we have the information. I mean,
Yeah, we can
we've got
check.
we've got people that have just been through this, so they can tell us and we can see what that looks like. You know,
We
Napa's.
have Middleton, Nampa,
And
Emmett.
in the valley,
Okay.
I mean,
And
there's
Melba's
small
been
schools,
doing it.
but
Melba's small,
it's really
doesn't, I
hard to
mean, that's not
compare.
gonna help us, but Napa's picking up that.
Okay.
I don't mind the idea if we're adding days, but I don't like the idea of adding the hours to
And
the
I'm with
kids'
you on that.
days.
Yeah.
Cause the education
Yeah.
suffers.
I don't know.
Right, I mean, nobody's attention span is gonna stay that long.
Yeah.
So I agree with.
I haven't heard back from, like, I texted Ron Greg for the one thing, like, from Napa Christian, he goes, we're on a 5-day, I'm sorry, Greg, Ron Greg.
Well, it just
Yeah.
seems like if we're getting 80 grand or whatever it was, 70 grand from just removing the busing from the middle school one day, like imagine just the savings in busing, which I know is 15%, but it's still like, it's less
Yeah.
miles, it's less hours. Plus, I mean, all the hourly wages for all the, is it certified or class? I mix them up,
Classified.
whichever ones of the
Mhm.
hourly employees.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes that's definitely a pay cut, but it is maybe attractive to a different clientele. I know Nampa said that they were doing that partially to attract teachers that wanted to work that schedule, so. I don't know how people feel about that.
But you know, they have Brown, well, they've contracted with Brown Bus for years, but, I mean, we can also find out, like, what is that done for their contract too, you know, with
Yeah.
Brown Bus and whatever, so. Cause we know the people that could help us answer those questions for you.
Yeah, they can just kind of help us with a
Yeah,
ballpark
yeah,
type thing.
yeah. Yes, we can work on that. I can tell you since the day after we found out that the levy didn't pass, we've spent every day just trying to think of every possible thing. None of it was fun. We were trying to keep what we could of people in the schools, you know, but one of the things on the levy was, that we said, was the annex at Hubbard is not safe for kids. So that was one of the reasons we did put that on the table, and if we could figure out how to get that roof fixed, it would be great. You know, it's just, we had to think of safety. And again, none of it is fun.
I guess one other thing that I do, somebody brought up to me, and I'm sure, is that possibly we have 2 athletic directors at the middle school level, and are they paid more? And is there a possibility of having 1 athletic director at the middle school level instead of 2?
one of our middle schools it's an administrator, so he gets it's just other duty as assigned. The other one is a teacher, so he gets a $2,500.
So there wouldn't be any cost savings there, that's,
$2,500 thing.
okay.
We had one before that went between the 2, and it didn't.
Both schools felt like the other school got, it's hard to have both have the same idea, you know.
And it doesn't sound like a lot of savings. Okay.
Okay, thank you, appreciate the, tough work that you guys are doing and the time that you spend on it. Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Kirsty?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Adjourn, thank you.